Cut the Check podcast, brought to you by Craft Farmer, bringing you weekly motivation, unmatched cultivation tech, and telling you some badass war stories along the way. All right, welcome to the podcast. We want to thank our sponsors, Grow Generation, where the pros go to grow, stores open nationwide, all over the place. And we want to thank our sponsor, Tree Stars Seed Bank, home of the exotic beans. So thank you to both of our sponsors for believing in the platform and the message that we're sharing and the things that we talk about. Without support from the audience and sponsors, none of this would be possible. So thank you for that. Today, we have our special guest and the newest member of the team of Craft Farmer here, Alex. And so I just thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about, you know, kind of like your background, where you come from, you know, what you've done, how you ended up here, how we ended up working together, all those kind of cool things. And then, you know, just share some of the ideas that we have and the things that we want to work on. Both of us share the philosophy of education and helping other people and being passionate about that. So it was kind of like a natural fit. So again, welcome to Sonoma County. It was quite a big life-changing move for you and probably quite a different experience. And we can get into all that stuff.
Yeah, psyched to be here. Having watched so many of the podcasts and now to be a part of it. Super meaningful, and to be a member of what's going on at Craft Farmers feels really good. You know, big steps moving forward and shifting how things are being done in this industry.
Yeah, we just had our preliminary Craft Farmer Academy class, Intro to Crop Steering, and if there's one thing, you know, that I really took away from that is that, like, man, like, we're doing the right thing, we're helping the right people, we're sharing the right knowledge, like, you know, you have all these wonders and are we going in the right direction? Am I doing the right thing? Is it well received? You know, like, it couldn't have gone any better. The support and how everybody was and how comfortable it was, and just the whole event went really, really smooth, and we had a great time. And so it just left me feeling just like we're doing the right thing and we're helping the right people, and just very rewarding from, you know, giving back standpoint. So that was really cool to experience.
I think it's a big deal to be a part of the cultural shift, to bringing a lot of this energy to the forefront and this education to the forefront of what's happening in people's grows. Because you hear so much, but to take the steps to actually bring it to the people and put the efforts and resources to create such a special event and hear the feedback, it really is just that, a super special opportunity, and definitely affirms that the right stuff's happening.
Yeah, and then it just got me excited on developing, you know, the curriculum with you, and developing what we're going to do, and developing our next class and our next round of you know, speakers, and lot on the table, a lot of stuff for us to do, and there's not a better time than now. I feel kind of like the noose is around the neck of the industry, and just my own personal belief. You know, I kind of thought that this was going to happen from the beginning, that the big corporate companies were going to come in. They're going to try to choke everyone out. We're starting to see, you know, things are starting to kind of happen like that. It's like almost like a race to the bottom, eliminate everybody and then rebuild. And so our competition is fierce, and we really kind of have to come together and share the correct information, and not looking at each other as foes, but more or less, you know, partners in a team, and help one another versus try to do this solo.
Yeah, it's that building community component that I always identified with Craft Farmer. Before, you know, I thought I was going to move to the West Coast and work for a Craft Farmer and be part of the team. You saw that energy of creating a community, and it's nice to be a part of that moving forward, because it truly is going to be the future as these larger MSOs do continue to tighten that noose.
So tell us a little bit kind of like about your background. What are like some of your first memories of just plant work in general, and kind of like your upbringing, and you know, how'd you end up in the East Coast and in Maine and all of that to even begin with?
Yes. So it's funny because my first job was working in glass greenhouses doing tropical plant propagation after school.
So is that your very
first job,
intro to like plants and everything?
13 years old, and my brother had been working there. It was a 100-year-old Swedish family on Long Island, so North Shore Long Island is where I'm from, and my parents were like, "We'll get a job if you want money." So sure enough, I went down there. I was like, "Hey, I know I'm not of legal age, but..."
Older brother then?
My older brother.
What's your age difference?
He's 4 years older.
Okay.
And they were like, "Yeah, you can weed in the greenhouses." So I'd ride my bike over there. Come springtime, it would start. I do it all summer, all fall, and then shut down in the winter.
Brutal winters, right?
Yeah, no, super cold. And these were heated glass greenhouses, like old style, like original Dutch design. And this was aquatic horticulture. So we were doing like lilies and lotuses. And so I was doing the weeding, and then I got into the splitting of the plants and learning how to do the whole production for gearing up for summer sales and stuff. So I did that at 13 all the way through age 21.
Wow.
So every summer I'd do that, and I would do like 80-hour work weeks when I was like 15 and 16, just like helping run the nursery, you know, and like doing whatever like shit job that you'd give.
So is this nursery open to the public? Would public go there to do their shopping and whatnot?
Correct. Yeah, and my family was like real into doing like aquatic like pond design stuff for fun.
Cool.
So like I was around plants a lot as a young person. Went off to college, got an education like you're supposed to, and still wanted to work with plants. So then I shifted.
Did you leave to go to college?
Left to go to college. Went to college in upstate New York at a small liberal arts school. Probably not money well spent, but did that for 4 years, and then got out of college, and I still wanted to grow plants. Everybody thought law was the way to go, and I decided to move to Maine and farm.
Wow.
So 22, I ended up from New York to Maine, and I started doing production vegetables. And that was, I spent 3 years in southern Maine and then moved north to like real rural country, actually Amish country.
Wow.
And started doing, so I did the 3 years vegetable production, and then I went into beef and dairy cow production and row cropping for grain and like grass-fed forage style hay production.
So huge plots.
550-acre farm.
Okay.
And we were running a lot of, 4,000 laying hens, hundreds of beef cows, hundreds of dairy cows.
Because this is a lot of stuff we don't think about, and I didn't even realize this till just a few years ago, but when you have a dairy or beef cattle or anything else and you see this very large land, this plot where they take up, the farmer has to grow his own feed for the animals too. And that's where you start seeing like hundreds of acres of corn, and they're relying on that corn to make the feed, to feed their animals. Like there's so much of this that goes hand in hand that you don't really understand the totality of it looking at that small picture.
And if you're producing grain, you're going to feed that grain in the wintertime. We were like the next step, which is we just fed grass. So not only like it's easy to seed down a crop of corn, spray with herbicide, cultivate it. We grew forage, and we like literally were grass growers, and we had to harvest all the grass to make it through a Maine winter.
Wow.
Hits -10, -20 in Maine at some points of the year. You got to have all that grass ready to go. If there's a drought in the summertime, that's going to impact your winter crop. So it was kind of this like fine balance in the world of production ag, super slim margins, which is like historic for any farmer. We see it now with cannabis.
Crazy,
it always comes.
How hard the farmers always had it. Like even going back and hard tilling and pulling your tools with oxen, and just the farmer's always the last to get paid,
Always.
offered the littlest amount of money. Like it's just wild, like the burden and what the farmer has carried on their shoulders throughout our entire existence.
And when it's small and like it's not developed, it's always like, you know, there's a lot to go around. And then as anything scales up, it gets harder and harder for that smaller producer. And I saw it. I mean, we were doing something that was like against all odds, working. You know, milking cows and putting it in glass jars and sending it all over the state of Maine. So I drove a milk truck when I was in Maine. Like I wore every
would literally
hat.
like deliver to the stores and the customers and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was like one of the first things I was doing. Did the animal breeding and managing like the stock during the winter time to prep the new moms. Yeah, every aspect. And then I was like, you can't make money with dairy cows and beef cows unless you're going to inherit a farm, because how do you buy 550 acres? So I shifted my focus at that point to still working at the farm, but I started to lease land and grow vegetables.
Wow.
And I started to look at more of the business side of things. And what you can do with vegetables is high density cropping and start to explore ways to increase the profitability of what you're doing. So like, what is the dollars per square foot yielded per crop and all that. So my focus shifted a little bit, and I did it through basically understanding like, well, this is going to be really difficult to make a living. So how can I pivot but still be a farmer? So after 3 years doing the livestock thing, I shifted to working part-time and then managing my own veg production. Did that for about a year. I was splitting my time, and then I went full bore, independent, leased land, and was running my own intensive diversified veg production.
Wow.
Yeah, which at the peak of it, it would be about 7 acres of crops in production at a time. Staff of 1. I was the owner and operator. So it was this balance of like wanting to get going in an industry that historically is wildly oppressive unless you have land access and like deep pockets. So, you know, it was humble beginnings. And I specialized in cut greens production.
So when you say cut greens, is that like kind of like microgreens? Or
No,
what is cut greens?
So I was doing lettuce production, like bag lettuces, and
so like red leaf lettuce, green lettuce, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I got into it. I was growing like 32 different varieties.
Wow.
And I wanted to make it as unique as possible, just like the bag appeal in this industry now.
Right.
Like, what is going to make somebody stop in their tracks and reach for, you know, a product that sells for $16 to $18 a pound for lettuce? It's got to be something special.
So is this a special, like high density, nutrient rich lettuce that you're focusing on?
Yeah, I was over the top with how I was preparing the soil with, you know, the proper trace minerals to ensure that you're actually getting a nutrient dense food. And I was probably dumping way too much money into that element of the business because the consumer doesn't always value that. But that was my thing. And I prided myself on like the best greens you're ever gonna have in that bag. That was my thing. Like, it was always gonna be perfect. And I started to develop, you know, an albeit small but profitable business in Maine as a one-person show, and then grew that business to take on employees.
That's incredible.
And I did that for 4 seasons. And that too has a writing on the wall, and it was scale up, which I was totally willing to do. But it's a 5 to 6 month growing season in the state of Maine because it's so damn cold.
Right.
And that's where I made the decision to pivot out of production vegetables and stay in ag, but I saw value in cannabis.
And was it legal at that point, or was it just starting to legalize in Maine? Like it legalized here, Prop 64, I believe in 2017. So that was our first time where it's like, okay, like it's rec. It just hit. What was that atmosphere like for you at this transitioning period?
So it was rec had passed in Maine, but it was a really slow rollout. Like it has been everywhere.
Whereas it passes, but then the counties, you know, don't pass their own ordinance. So they're like,
Correct.
okay, if it's, even though it's legal here, we're not doing it, or we're not participating.
Correct. So it was like, well, what is the landscape? Nobody really knows yet. And in the state of Maine, whoever's familiar with a very large state with a very small population, there's really one place that you're after, and it's Portland.
Got it.
Which is not the state capital, but is the most populated part of Maine. Everybody was waiting to see what Portland was going to do. So medical was strong. There's a medical program that had been strong for a long time, but rec was still uncertain. But you could see that it was going to happen in a state like Maine. There's not a whole lot for industry outside of tourism, lobsters and potatoes grown up north. So it's ripe for cannabis to be rolled out for, all the tax reasons.
Right.
So yeah, I contacted a grower in Portland. I was living 2 hours north of Portland, and I was still farming. So I actually, to bring it back the timeline, I'm still operating the farm. Contacted a grower. I was like, I want experience. It was winter. I was still planning on a growing season coming up, starting in spring. So I took a job in the winter as a trimmer, and I would drive 2 hours every day to trim and then drive back in the winter time just to get my foot in the door because I had no cannabis experience.
And that's normally what it takes. A lot of people reach out and ask, well, how do you get in? It's like at the lowest entry. Like I've always just thought, like, get your foot in the door, whatever it takes, and then allow your work ethic and who you are as a person and everything else shine, like it will be noticed.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly the mentality that I was taking. It seemed kind of crazy at that time to be driving 4 hours a day.
And you feel like you're taking a step back,
For sure.
And trimming sucks. Like, it's not something you're looking forward to doing. You're driving somewhere to sit for 8 hours with intense focus and just nonstop hand action.
And you're hopefully trimming good product. In this case, it wasn't great product.
Which makes the job even worse.
So much harder. So I did that for a winter, and then the previous head cultivator ended up departing. The results weren't really there. I had already begun to work in the grow at that point, just doing some plant skirting, sprays, minor vegetative maintenance stuff. But the value is there for how I would be incorporated into the staff in the actual cultivation facility. So I was offered a gig to take on the grow management position. And I actually
That's a big step up.
It is a big step up. I actually turned it down because I wanted to keep farming. So came out of wintertime, got this job offer. I said I'd do it in the fall. And they said, okay, we'll wait. So they waited all summer.
Wow, for you to do a whole nother season of row cropping.
Yep. And then I dissolved the farm, sold off equipment, and then moved down to Portland and started in September. And I ended up doing that. So I was just cultivation manager, and then ended up becoming the director of cultivation, and then de facto the GM. Because that's what ends up happening. Like anybody who's in a decision-making position at and this is a 2,000 square feet of flowering canopy, not a massive facility by any means. When you're in any sort of high-level position, you end up taking on a lot more.
For sure.
Yeah, you wear all the hats. So I ended up doing that for 2.5 years. So it was a very humble start and accelerated very quickly. Why it worked so well is it tapped into the very sentiment that informed the vegetable production that I was doing, which was looking at the yield per square foot, per watt, however you want to break out the metrics. But we started to understand the production the same way that I was looking at lettuce. And it was really dialing in every component in the cycle to make it a profitable venture, while also in pursuit of high quality. That's already what I was doing. So I got to kind of enter this business model at a time of transition when it was hand watering in smart pots, very, very small plant count, to going to more of the sea of green, denser canopy, 1 gallon, and then ultimately pushing crop steering and automation. So it was kind of this confluence of some pretty incredible factors.
What do you think at that time was like one of your biggest challenges, coming from row cropping, being offered this position as a lead cultivator, coming on with this company. What were your biggest challenges that you remember, like looking back at that transition?
So there were so many elements to it that were completely foreign to me. The biggest thing is like, I'm an outdoor grower. Like it was glass greenhouses,
Right.
and it was growing in soil, and now we're growing cocoa and rock wool. I didn't look at, I had to change my whole mindset, like water as a delivery of nutrients. That's not how you view it
Right.
as somebody growing outside. So understanding the crop cycle, I really had to buckle down and begin to look at all the finer points that had been published on crop cultivation for tomatoes and cannabis, to begin to understand, like, okay, how do I really approach this with a degree of understanding informed by science, not just like hearsay, because there's all this like, we'll do it this way. Bro science is a term people throw around. I didn't know anything, and I had to quickly learn it, but I wanted to learn the right information. So the hardest part was like finding the right information, and then ensuring that you were like headed down the path of calculated decision making, not just sentiment driven emotional stuff because your dad or your brother or your uncle grow the plant like this. And there was nobody telling me what to do at that point. That the lead cultivator had left, I was being brought on to manage the grow, and the owner of the company was still living in the past for hand watering, but we wanted to move into the future. So that was hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Super exciting though, because you're learning everything that everybody wants to know, and you've got a template in which to do it, or a canvas rather. I won't call it a template.
So at that point, where are you learning the majority of your stuff, or what are you finding influential that's molding you to who you're becoming and how you're making these decisions?
So the resources that we were utilizing were some, it's old publications, looking at some stuff that Grodan had put out. We onboarded with Arroya. They had like their introductory material. So we basically took the few pages of information we were given, and at that point, like, Arroya was pretty new. It was kind of a meager onboarding situation, and we literally just obsessed. We obsessed over everything. Like, if they talked data collection, we would make sure that everything we did was recorded. Like, every move in the grow was recorded. And that's how we were learning, because, to be honest with you, there wasn't a whole lot out there for how do you manage a crop with this like steering context.
Right.
So a lot of what we were doing was trial by fire. We were crashing some of these cycles because it was like, oh, we're going to stack EC.
Right.
What does that really mean? How much runoff should we be getting? And then we would do no runoff, and they were just like, it's like feeding a crop root beer. It's so salty, like they can't even draw the water out of the root zone. It's foxtailing under 1400 ppfd because we were told to put it under that.
Right.
So that's
it's like an introduction to LED lighting also.
That too. Like, they had just moved. Well, this grow in particular had been running Fluence 2Ps for a while, but also like not really informed by a whole lot except like what the Fluence salesperson had passed on. Which
can be all kinds of misinformation.
Oh, and constantly changing, and those documents are edited for a reason because stuff's so new. So yeah, the biggest barrier was kind of getting a grasp on like not only how to cultivate cannabis, but also how to move into like this higher level of understanding of the crop at hand, which we're all still trying to do. But such an incredible experience, and luckily we didn't exist in this gray zone for very long. Some incredible resources came our way, working with some really exceptional consulting services and some individuals that changed.
Which is amazing, because a lot of the stories we hear are poor crop consultants and poor consultations and fed information where you're looking at the information they be given and you're just wondering, where did it come from and what kind of bro science made this up. So it could have gone really badly also, and it seems like it went well for you.
Yeah, I mean, the horror stories are real, right? Because like everybody wants to depict themselves
Right.
as like the magi coming down from the mountains that's gonna get you 3 pounds per light, but like rarely is that the case, and sometimes it can lead to like catastrophic results. We did our research. Like when we paid the money for the consultant, we knew that like this person had the lexicon, the understanding, and the experience that we were after.
Right.
There weren't empty promises. Like there was evidence shown, an incredible walkthrough at the facility, and everything lined up for a really potent working relationship. But yeah, no, for sure. And the smallest things you think are going to be like fantastic. Like let's switch to something from cocoa to rock wool. Okay, I hope you have no systemic disease load, because the moment you move to an inert substrate, whatever underlying diseases you haven't dealt with are going to blow sky high, because suddenly you have an inert media that's going to be populated by systemic fusarium or botrytis. So like little things like that, it's like horrible when someone comes in and says, change your media. It's like, well, that could have heavy implications. So luckily we landed with someone good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you to our sponsor, Grow Generation, your one-stop shop for all your cultivation and gardening supplies. Grow Generation has everything you need under one roof. They also have a full commercial cultivation team that can make sure you have all the supplies you need to keep your gardens firing on all cylinders. Check out Grow Generation to find your closest retailer, or reach out to Grow Generation on Instagram. Grow Generation, where the pros go to grow. And so that transitioned into your next chapter. Started getting a grasp on everything, started understanding the process, started getting some real good leadership and you know, being taught or having the correct tools available.
Yeah, I was, before the consulting, definitely was worried about like, could we even pull this off? Because the information, like it was so few and far between for informed decision making that like those losses started to add up.
Yeah.
Like it definitely hurt watching this trial by fire. But it opened up the next chapter, as you described it. That's exactly what it was. We now had somebody telling us like, no, this needs to be like, there's a lot of data collection so we can understand and inform all of our decision making. So we onboarded with GrowLink at this facility. We were using Arroya, and we started to actually look at what crop steering was and how we could influence this game of pulling all these levers, because that's really what it is. You line up all your variables, and all those variables work together, but you have to understand how you're going to dial certain things back to respond to whatever changes may be happening to the grow, maybe undersized equipment, different parts of the crop cycle. So by having the data and the understanding of what we're actually setting out to do, we started to isolate variables and begin to truly steer the crop. So like we weren't just looking at drip EC as EC and pH. We were looking at drip EC, how it was influencing our root zone over the course of a 21 to 28 day generative phase. But that drip EC, how it was stacking, what salts were falling out of solution, how our salinity index was building in our root zone, how that was impacting the ability of the plant to uptake nutrients as we ramped up light intensity. All these things, we started to develop a very holistic understanding of crop steering strategy as something far greater than a 10-page handout from a sensor company. And not that those aren't great, those are incredible introductory resources.
But just what you said, they're introductory resources. They're not anything more.
No, and it can be super dangerous if those become the only ways you're going to create informed decisions, because it never tells you the whole story. I mean, like the crop looking as though it's foxtailing, or you have, that doesn't necessarily relate to your environment. That more so can be, I'm running a 1.2 VPD start of my vegetative phase, but I never adequately stabilize the root zone EC. So it's the plant can't cool itself because it can't drink. It has nothing to do with the ambient air temperature. So it's easy to get obsessed about like, oh, what's my ambient air temp? How are these double-ended fixtures influencing it? When really the issue is like, oh, I never got like a 30 to 40% drain event over the course of 3 or 5 days to stabilize my root zone EC as I transition from generative to vegetative. It's like little things like that. You see a symptom, you think you understand it. It's
right.
like, no, you really don't.
Oh, it's light intensity.
Yeah, it's light intensity. It's CalMag.
Right.
Yeah, whatever it may be. So yeah, that new chapter opened, and it provided an incredible opportunity to dig in on some of this stuff that is super technical, but allows you to like do some pretty wild cultivation work.
So where was that transition then? At what point did you start thinking like there's, I'm ready for the next step, or I'm just kind of getting burned out where I am? Like what led to the next move and the follow through with that?
So with any medical facility trying to transition into the rec market with like all this uncertainty, as an operator, you're like stuck in between lanes of like, are we gonna size up our canopy? And like, it's probably shouldn't be in this facility, because if we really want a return on that investment, we want to build something out and have it be done like
correctly.
Really, yeah. So it's like you're waiting for these decisions to come from the owners and people above you, and eventually you do get burned out, and you look to something that's in line with like the direction you're personally headed in, or what you identify as the future of the industry. So after 2.5 years of being involved with that company and incredible experience, I saw where I had been, where I had arrived, and where I wanted to go. And I looked to education and the growth of this industry as something that required a hard decision to move from the facility I was at to a new opportunity more in line with where I was at as a cultivator, which was like, I want to continue to push the envelope. I don't want to exist in the medical market hoping that it all lines up. And you want to be aligned with people who are like wanting to do the same thing. You're
limited in the medical realm just also by just the patients and what you can really do and what you can achieve and who's going to be able to really try your meds and all of that,
For sure. The net is small. Like, you really can't cast anything super broad in the medical market. And then rec comes along and it's like, oh, wow, to the 10th degree. You can do everything to the 10th degree. And it's incredible how you then can have an impact on so many people, and your work can go to so many people. That's exciting.
For sure.
So I looked to the West Coast. I mean, like literally ground zero for this industry, and kind of everything that's pushed what it's become nationwide, it's happened out here. So when you and I connected in February of this year, I saw what I described. Someone who's like hell-bent on the next big opportunity, no obstacles, no roadblocks. That's where I wanted to be, and you grow tired of every obstacle that I was encountering in the East Coast. So I was like...
And then not only that, but people are your obstacles. When you can't put yourself in a position where you have control, like even when you're doing something right and you're going the right direction, you can get derailed by another person who might be in a more powerful situation, or it's their facility, or even though this is the way we need to go and this is what we have to do, like it's like that's taken from you, that decision is taken from you, and then you're like, well, what are we doing then?
Yeah, I mean, you develop this whole, and that's a great point. You develop this whole strategy, right? And you figure out exactly how many labor hours are necessary to execute on that strategy, and then the price per pound comes down in the market, and guess what gets chopped first? Your labor hours.
Right.
Lose your labor hours, suddenly your strategy is compromised. When that's gone, you're not going to be able to keep doing the same quality
for
your output, and that, it becomes the people that you're working with, your obstacle.
Yeah, and then when they're always bringing that up, it's demoralizing. When the only thing that you're talking about is price per pound and how many pounds you're producing and how many grams per square foot, and none of the important things are looked at anymore. You know, none of the important attributes and qualities, and have the right decisions and doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, it's all the wrong reasons. It's so reductionist that it takes all this hard work, passion, I mean, the community, and boils it down to literally a spreadsheet column. And then you're supposed to come in and bring that same level of passion and excitement to the work you do. It just isn't going to last.
And that's something like I'm always thinking about is not letting the system just chew you up, you know, because there's so many obstacles that can demoralize or alter your sense of well-being and why you got into this. And so it's very important, I feel like, for, you know, cultivators and people every day to, that's like the first thing that you do when you're going to your facility or going into your room. Like, remember why you got into this, and regardless of the obstacles in front of you at the time, and like, you know, just regrounding yourself to remember why you're doing this, why you got into this, and being a little more in control of the narrative in your mind, you know, on a daily practice.
Yeah, the mental scape that you just described, it's just like a garden. You got to weed it and you got to maintain it. You let it get it away from you, and suddenly, like, it's totally out of control, and there's no bringing it back.
Right.
Except maybe a hard reset. So, yeah, you're right. You got to remind yourself as to, like, why you started this and how your passion was born. Because, yeah, there's always odds against you. I mean, heck, how often do people talk about the price in California? Like, it's literally like a headline article in whatever major publication. And it's like, no, people are still out here doing it.
Yep.
That's important. Always, like, remind yourself where you've come from and where you want to go.
And then if you have to shift or you have to change things, like having the power and the self-belief to doing that, you know, like if you're on a course that you don't like and you don't appreciate, like, doing the necessary steps like you to alter that. And regardless of how challenging it might be, you know, uplifting from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, but doing whatever you have to do to follow your belief system and where you think is right for you and where you want to be, because we only get to do this one time. Like, why ever sacrifice anything? It's not worth it. You know, it doesn't matter how much money you're getting paid, or like your heart has to be in your decision making, or it's just not worth it. Like, we're going to pay you $250,000 to sit in that box. Fuck that. I'd rather make $40K, barely get by, but be in a place where, like, I like it and I'm happy and I'm outside, you know, like those making those decisions for you and, you know, and your life, and making sure that you're the priority and you're not part of someone else's plan.
I mean, that's something I think people being a part of someone else's plan is, like, all too common. And you get a ticket for one to do this thing called life. Like, you get admission for one, and you have to be the person who's steering. Without that, you certainly can wake up in 5 or 10 years wondering, why am I still here in Maine?
Exactly.
Working at this medical facility. So yeah, it takes a recognition of, like, where does my heart lie? And it's funny, moving out here was tough, but when I talked to you about it, you could tell you share that same mentality, because, you know, obviously you acknowledge, like, yeah, it's a heck of a move, but, like, it's not a crazy concept to you because you're in the world of pivots.
For sure.
Like, that is what you do, you know? There's just, like, there is nothing slowing the course down. It's just a minor headache, and then let's move on to the next thing because we're going to achieve the results we're after. So that's been an incredible part of the energy of Craft Farmer, is that same idea of recognize why we're doing this and let's get it done.
Awesome. And then with that, you know, it kind of leads us into, you know, a big part obviously that I've always shared with you is like education and sharing with other people. It's like the most fulfilling thing you get, you know, when you see other people excited, rejuvenated, like it just rejuvenates your own flame. So one of the biggest things that you can give other people is like sharing education and sharing winning recipes and sharing things that work for you. And when you see other people's reactions to those rewards, it's like almost more fulfilling than when you reap the reward yourself, you know? And so we've been able to do that. And I feel like I don't have the greatest delivery myself, you know, like it's kind of all my stuff's come from trial and error in this somewhat organized chaos and all this stuff. And so I'm really excited just to like the amount, you know, like that category of professionalism that you bring, you know, I feel like it's just going to really help us get this message across in an easier way, a more explainable way, a more educational way. And so we're finally like diving into the Patreon, and we're working on our own website now, the Craft Farmer Academy. And as amazing as it is, as you set trends and people see you doing things and follow what you're doing, again, it's important not to just get in that rut of just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so I saw that happening, you know, with what I saw on Patreon that I didn't necessarily like. I realized, okay, you know, as this becomes bigger and people are investing in this information, I feel responsible for creating a better platform, a more educational platform, an easier to navigate platform, a way that I'd feel better. And so that's brought us into this wild development of this new site. And we have people working on it from like all over the world, which is crazy. Like the internet is so incredible now. It's not like, okay, who do you know who does this? Like I've partnered with, there's a lady named Kelsey. She's runs a marketing firm out of Humboldt, and she's helped me with some stuff. And so I've gone to her really for everything internet related, website related, everything I want to do. And she helps find these people who can do these things. And we've hired somebody from like France or some other part of the world that's developing this site. And it's not as easy as just building a website. You know, we have to have a credit card processor built in. We need an authorized gateway, a gateway built in that can do subscriptions and handle all this correctly. And then on top of that, we have this ghost account, which allows this kind of membership profile. Like there's all these different categories that are like going into creating this one thing, because what I want to do is create a site where you can go to and you can have subcategories of like all the information. So for those that don't know, Patreon right now is purely blog based. So something that I posted a year ago is so buried, you have to literally go down and scroll. And so many times I'm getting questions, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? Oh, well, I've covered it. Well, where? You can't even tell somebody where to go because it's just lost in this posting list. So as we transition into this site over the next couple months, we're going to be able to really have all these categories broken down and very easy to navigate, you know, from room parameters to irrigation guides to strategies to cultivation documents to videos, pictures, grow journals, like really breaking that down where you can go in and find the information that you need and really be able to apply it. And then at the same time, you know, your element of educational and explaining things, like I'm reading the post as you post them and I'm learning things that I didn't know. You know, for those that don't know, you know, Alex just came on board on the Patreon. We're just starting to really work on this, and you can just see the difference between what I've shared and like your style. So now you're not just getting one fucking cultivator, you're getting these different, you know, different people and these different perspectives. And I want to run with that. I want to hire other cultivators to, you know, share their information and have them as like a subcategory, you know, like I've always wanted to somehow put money into cultivators' pockets, and the only way up until this point is buying their work.
For sure.
And this will allow them to pay them for education and then share that education with our audience. And so it's even just the Craft Farmer Academy, like having people come, like what's just as important is being able to call my peers and pay them a great wage to share the information they know. Like that's just as empowering as having the people come and be the audience, is being able to call, my peers in this industry and be like, hey, I want to fly you out here. I want to pay you to speak for an hour, hour and a half, share your information. Like that's just as empowering,
Yeah, and the fact that you want to value all that experience and time that went into that cultivator's success is also pretty special, because it's like rarely the case.
Everyone's like, oh, well, bro, how much? And what's the cheapest? And, well, can you do it for this? Yeah. And it's like, I asked how much and then paid everyone over that. Like, it's a great feeling. And I want to create that. And maybe that will open up other opportunities. Like we already see other people with their Patreons and selling their tech, and people have even been like, man, you've inspired me to do this. Well, like hopefully we can continue this inspiration of learning, of teaching, of people putting themselves in situations. Like, I mean, dude, it wasn't comfortable for me when I was like, okay, I'm going to start this Patreon. Nobody had done it yet. I'd never taught things. So it's like, okay, you know what? And then you're like, oh, is anyone going to sign up? And will people want this? And I just had to basically just shut all that shit off and be like, you know what? If no one signs up, it is what it is. I'm going to share this information. I'm going to make it so people sign up. I'm going to share very detailed information. Like, fuck this little bitch voice that always pops up, the voice of self-doubt, of self-worry, of self-acceptance. Like, oh, you're putting yourself out there, and if you only have 2 members, and it is what it is. Like, don't do it for those reasons. Don't do it for the justification. Do it because like that's what feels good inside, Yeah,
you knew. You listened to the very voice that you described earlier. Like you knew what you wanted to do, and you were going to figure out.
I wanted that. I wanted that for me. I wanted to have something that I could sign up for and learn. There isn't. Okay, well then I'm going to help create this.
And when you tap into that, like when your intentions are pure and you like truly want to help the community that you're a part of, it comes to fruition.
Yeah.
It might be slow, humble beginnings, but it comes to fruition. And then the next part is like growing it to this living, breathing archive that you describe with the Academy, like moving from just being a Patreon account to like growing with your consumer base.
Yeah, and your audience, and listening to them. Hey, we can't find this information. Okay, well, looks like I need to make this better. I need to, instead of just being comfortable, I need to go outside of my element. I need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on this to make it special. These people have spent money on this. It's my obligation to make this even better, to make this more educational, to make this a better platform to navigate, to find people that can bring more information than just my style and my point of view.
And this isn't like new information, and that's the irony of it, is like there's no one person to attribute this to. I mean, you can attribute it to like the tomato industry in Holland. Like they're the people who like actually got into crop manipulation. So it's never like you hear names thrown around, and there's like fantastic individuals in this industry who have paved the way. But it's all about doing what you described, consolidating the information, because like all the experts have fantastic experience, but nobody's reinventing the wheel.
And then delivery. Like everyone has such a different delivery system. It might be very easy to understand my delivery and a lot harder to understand that delivery from another person. So we might be able to be sharing the same information, but you don't understand it because of the way it's being delivered.
For sure.
And to base, to follow up with what you just said, like I've always told everyone, there's nothing that I'm going to show you or teach you that I came up with. Nothing. Like I didn't invent any of this. I didn't come up with any of this tech. I didn't come up with really any of it, but I've found a way to take it, harness it, use it, to where it's like, oh shit, he's crushing it, you know, and then just share how I interpreted it and then how I use it. You know, because if you and I were both given the same information in the same controlled environments based on how we digest and perceive that information and then how we apply it is going to be different. Like our rooms will look differently even though we have that same information. You know, and that's why it's so important to get the information from everyone. You know what I mean? Like if you want to be the best at what you're doing, investing in a few Patreons or investing with people who are doing well and people that you can learn from is the best investment you can make. We go out and spend fucking $10 a day on a coffee, $15 on a lunch, buy a bag of weed for $50. Like there's all kinds of bullshit we're spending money on. The best money you can spend is educating yourself and putting yourself in a power position.
Yeah, I mean, it was through education that the facility I started at was able to grow in leaps and bounds. If we didn't make that investment, if we didn't look to the experts, we still would be crop crashing. We'd still be watching these plants shrivel up and die day 40 because we haven't run off through the root zone sizable volumes. So it's like, it makes such a difference. And I think when you make it so approachable through a website that allows it to be like not a massive monetary hit for the individual, like this is really reasonable,
right?
The whole thing, that will change everything you're doing and it'll reward you in spades. Up front, it's like maybe a foreign concept to reach for a resource or somebody who has a different experience. But that's the key to unlocking success. Otherwise, you're going to be on the slow burn. Yeah, maybe in 10 years, you'll arrive at the same point. Why don't you just expedite it? Let someone else's failures inform the next big change in your tent or at your facility or the next facility you build.
And then learn why they're being done, what this terminology is, how it's being applied, how you can apply it, you know, how you can use it to benefit your life and grow.
Yeah, the dialogue is everything. It's the conversation. I mean, like that's truly where innovation is born. Without that, it becomes everything is like this isolated vacuum.
Right.
So yeah, you want to understand, ask the questions, and then open up those channels. And I can see it, like, you know, with the Patreon posts, I'll say, like, I want to urge people to reach out, ask questions.
Yeah, engage in the comments. Like when you, obviously, you know, when you think of just self-confidence and questions you have, and has this been answered? Like, you know, there's just so much pressure put on all of us about self-bullshit is all it comes down to. You know what I mean? And so I would just really encourage everyone to, instead of just DM those questions, like ask them under the post, because your question is educating other people. You know what I mean? Like that when we answer your question, being and allowing everyone else to see it is very educational. It's not just the post, it's the conversations that happen below, you know, what people bringing up certain topics or why this or this is what I thought was the right way. And then continuing that dialogue under the post itself versus reaching out in a DM. And we'll always answer the DM, but I definitely encourage everyone to, you know, write your questions below the posts, ask questions about the post, anything like that. There's no such thing as a dumb question or a point of view or anything like that.
Yeah, the analogy for me is this: it's no different than presenting employees. Like if you want to teach them with a grow journal on the cycle. I don't care that we dripped a 3,3 EC for all of the vegetative steer. What else happened?
Right.
Like, how are we going to replicate this? It's like create that conversation and like show people how it started and all the other information that's unfolded to allow us to better understand concepts, techniques, and strategies. So yeah, it's big push to keep it in the comments section. Obviously DM though.
And then not only that, like, you know, if you've been a member and then you've left, you know, a lot of all this information is as we're cultivating and we're doing things, we're changing this thing as we're finding better ways and different parameters. Like, we're not just leaving stuff in there. Like, this stuff is getting changed, rewritten. We're constantly pushing the envelope. Like, all of our rooms, we're always testing things. We're doing some crazy things with under canopy lights and very high EC feeds and all kinds of stuff to, you know, find results and give everybody really valid information, you know, letting us take some of that guesswork out of it and sharing this with you. So if you've been a member before, I highly suggest that you come back. Alex is posting now and sharing a lot of the information that you have, and it's definitely on another level than what I've been doing, and so great value. I'm learning a tremendous amount, and I encourage everyone else to, you know, come be a part of it, and really looking forward to rolling out the new website, rolling out another class. You know, everybody was like, man, we like hungry. They were hungry for knowledge and sharing the experience. And even though we called it crop steering, you know, it was very diversified. Tim delivered a phenomenal presentation on leadership and what to look for and how to be a leader towards other people, and just really, really good information. So no matter what your skill level or where you're at, a lot of great information can be coming. And then I just walking around and listening and hearing the networking and the stuff going around was phenomenal. You know, like, new friends were made, new connections were made, people were leaving with all kinds of fire gear. Tree Star showed up, sold out of seeds. You know, we were sharing flour with everybody who wanted to try Dank Mob and Warheads. And so we just want to continue doing this. I want to continue to, besides the educational thing, we're going to always, you know, make sure that there's seeds there, there's flowers there, you know, maybe get our cut club going, like just doing seeing what people, like having this event also allows you to see what other people need, what they want, what they're trying to procure. So it allows us to adapt and just get them what they're really interested in, you know, and listen to that. And so I saw there was some career moves being made. I saw people talking about moving to other locations for facility stuff, like
it's crazy,
fucking wild, you know, like Foch was there. Just really cool group of people. There are people there building facilities. There are people there who ran facilities. There are people there who wanted to get into commercial cultivation, and opportunities were opened. Like
networking.
I mean, dude, the networking side of things was amazing. Like listening to the conversations during break and the sharing, and just really overall phenomenal experience. Phenomenal. So I'm excited to get that going. Super stoked to have you on the team. Excited to see that what we do together, and how much more information that we can deliver, and how much further our reach can be made, and how many people we can share that information with. So I'm super excited. We're in the infant stage of this whole thing, and so super excited, and I'm excited to develop this whole program with you, and glad you're a part of the team.
Psyched to be here. Yeah, everything you've done leading up to this moment in time has created like such a rich foundation for us to make this all happen. So I look at it and it's like, yeah, well, how can this not work?
And then not only that, like a big thing for me is always like, I never want anybody to ever think like, oh, that it's just education now. And like, we're in the fucking trenches. Like we got thousands of lights about to come online in Michigan, and Alex and I are going to take everything that we're sharing with you, everything that we're trying to teach you, and show you what it fucking does on a commercial application.
It's like the ultimate teacher moment. You take the information and then you're going to apply it.
Like we're about to pivot again. Like, everybody sees me helping people with their facilities and getting them lighting and benching and dehumidification and all these service drawing out facilities. And there's only so much time in a day, and the pivot is coming. It's very close. Like as soon as when all these lights come on, we're really close. I'm pivoting away from all that, and I'm focusing on strictly cultivation and education. And we're going to have our education platform, and then we're going to have our cultivation platform where we're literally running thousands of lights and making all these adjustments and implementing everything that we're showing to you in real time. So that's what is the most exciting. Like we see so many different platforms. Like who's a platform that is not only like, you know, came from that first of all, trying to make a real legit academy approach about this and then implementing it in real time. It's going to be really fucking cool.
Yeah, you don't see this. Like this is unique and an exceptional opportunity, and it allows you to evaluate,
right?
Make those changes. Like I said, living, breathing archive. Like it doesn't stop. It never gets stale. It grows with everything else we've got going on.
And then continuing to build the team, you know, like we've got this amazing podcast stereo set up, but I always call it like the war room because like I'm fucking ready to go to war from here. Like I'm ready to like run these lights and run these facilities across the United States from here, from this room, like pulling up our data and pulling up our spreadsheets and having our soldiers over there reporting our runoff volumes and our EC volumes and our pH volumes. And then you and I are strategizing what adjustments need to be made for the front line that day. And fucking it's
a war room.
It's badass to
badass.
Think about and talk about, and being able to see that in real time. And we're going to have Ian documenting that, and then having partners that believe in us and believe in this educational platform. And you know, when I went to Tree Star and Grow Generation, it was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like they could have easily said no, but like they understand this. Like they want to help reach these people and share this information, you know, and it's just really cool to have people that believe in your message. And then there's people probably listening out there who are going to be a part of this team in some way or another, or different sponsors and helping the progression of education and helping change people's lives and you know, the life of steak and lobster, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's really cool. It's a straight domino effect. It's contagious. We're like a fucking virus. Like that's how I feel right now. Like a really good life-changing fucking virus. Like mycelium.
Finally, a positive spin on the virus for 2022.
For sure. Like Craft Farmer is a form of mycelium that's just fucking just growing into your life and infiltrating your cultivation. Like I feel like we're a part of these guys. Like when they tell me like, bro, look, when they send videos every day, look at our canopy, look at my cultivation. Holy shit, I've never had plants grow like this. Like we're fucking in their grow, dude. Our blood is pumping through their fucking spot, regardless how big or small.
Yeah, it's incredible what information, how far it can go and how far it can take you. I love it.
Cool. Well, this is Alex. He's the newest member to Craft Farmer. He'll be answering questions. We're going to start doing live calls. We're going to just really make this fun. You know what I mean? So we're getting really close to rolling some of this stuff out. Every month we're going to start doing a live episode where you can call in, we can talk to you, we can answer some questions, and just make this super fun. So thanks again. I'm super stoked to be doing this, and let's see where we can take this.
Appreciate it, man.
Awesome.